Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Scouts, attention. Flag detail, forward march. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Elliot, post the colors. You may be seated. Flag detail, dismissed.
Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. Welcome. If you're just coming in, go ahead and have a seat. Thank you to Boy Scout Troop 39. My name is Adrienne Garson, and I'm the publisher of Charlotte Media Group, and we are the publishers of the Matthews Mint-Hill Weekly newspaper. Thank you all for being here. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our candidates as well. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your evening to participate. Thank you to Levine Senior Center for hosting us. This is quite a crowd. I would like to let everyone know that this forum is being streamed live on Facebook, so you can actually go back and rewatch it if you like. And there are a few folks in the audience I would like to recognize. This evening, we have some candidates for the school board at Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board at Large. Jennifer De La Hora, if you want to. Here. Elise Dashu. And Monty Witherspoon. Thank you all for being here. I would like for you all to keep in mind that our Coffee with a Candidate podcasts are all available on our Facebook pages, so you can go back and listen to those. We will be releasing some of our candidates' podcasts throughout the rest of this week, but even the ones that have already recorded them, they're still available online. So without further ado, I'd like to thank Miss Laura Budd for being our moderator of Weaver Budd Law right here in Matthews. She's our gracious moderator, so this is my cue to let her take over the show.
All right, good evening. Can everybody hear me? Well, okay. I'm going to use my attorney voice. Can everybody hear me? No. Adrienne, I need a microphone. Is your mic on? Just pull it closer.
Now I feel like an old timer. A little thing going here. Okay, I'm Laura Budd. I am your moderator this evening. So I would like to welcome you, and I would like to thank all of our candidates and welcome them for coming to this evening's debate, the Evening with the Candidates. First, I'm going to review the forum, or the format that we're going to use with regards to tonight's debate. First, the candidates have been placed together in groups of 3, except for one, which is a group of 4. Each grouping has been done by the paper, without any input from anyone, and then submitted to me at the very end. And from there, we put the questions together. Each grouping is comprised of 1 incumbent and 2 challengers, except for group 1, which contains 1 incumbent and 3 challengers. However, it also contains both candidates for mayor. Each group will receive a question from me, and the candidates individually will have 1 minute to respond to that question. If necessary, and is determined by me, a candidate will have 30 seconds to give a rebuttal. Candidates are asked to remain professional and to answer the question that's asked. Audience questions are encouraged. The Troop 39 Boy Scouts are here, and note cards and pencils have been passed out. Please write your questions down and pass them to the outside aisles. A scout will come up and down the aisle every couple of minutes and pick up any questions that have been put together. They will then be vetted in the back by the Matthews Mint-Hill Weekly and passed forward to me at certain intervals. At the end of the debate, each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer any question previously asked but was not given the opportunity to answer, as well as make a closing statement. We do ask to make sure that all cell phones are turned off or on silent. It is being live streamed tonight on Facebook and will also be on the Matthews Mint-Hill Weekly Facebook page for later reviewing, and I believe their website as well. So there's no need to record tonight's debate for posterity, as you will have complete access to it following tonight's events. And thank you, and I don't believe there's anything else. Is there, Ms. Garson? Right. Before I give the first question, if each candidate, beginning with Paul Bailey, please state your name and whether or not you are running as an incumbent or a challenger.
My name is Mayor Paul Bailey, and I'm running as incumbent.
My name is Ben Bash, and I'm running as a challenger.
Hi, I'm Gina Hoover, and I'm running as a challenger.
I'm Mayor Pro Tem John Higdon, and I'm running as a challenger.
I'm Commissioner Barbara DeMint. I'm running as an incumbent.
And I'm Larry Whitley, and I'm running as a challenger.
Mark Tefano, running as a challenger.
Jeff Miller, running as an incumbent commissioner.
Alan Crosby, running as a challenger.
Ken McCool, running as a challenger.
Renee Garner, running as a challenger.
John Urban, running as an incumbent.
I'm Dave Bland, I'm running as a challenger.
All right, beginning with Group 1, the question is with regards to education. House Bill 514, which was passed in 2018, gave Matthews the right to build a charter school restricted to Matthews children. The response from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system was immediate and negative. In fact, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system has gone so far as to publicly state it will not allocate funds to build schools in Matthews now. What steps would you take to rebuild the working relationship with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system if elected? And you may begin, Mr. Bailey.
We had a committee formed of citizens who reviewed HB 514, the parts of that were focused on the charter school. And that particular bill went up to Raleigh from Matthews before it was finished. 3 other towns got on board with that. What I'll do with 514 is first say that I told the school board chairman when I became mayor that I was not going to actively pursue anything in that arena immediately. Secondly, we formed a Matthews Education Advisory Committee that is now working on all aspects of education within Matthews, and they will be bringing forward to us a position on charter schools.
Thank you. Mr. Bash?
Thank you. So I think there's a couple of things that we probably ought to talk about here. One being, Matthews is blessed to have some really excellent school options, right? I'm a father of 2, and that's one of the big reasons we moved to Matthews. I'm also a student myself, as I'm going through seminary right now, and I'm also an educator. I teach an entrepreneurship in high school. And obviously education is important to me, but the reality is Matthews has some legitimate issues and concerns over how CMS administers local schools, and those need to be addressed as we move forward in our discussions with CMS. But here's the thing, right? I think our ultimate goal is to be collaborative and seek reconciliation with CMS, right? I am a firm believer in what Paul wrote in Romans, that to the extent it is within your power, live at peace with everybody. Well, that includes CMS.
Ms. Hoover?
House Bill 514, in my opinion, is going to cost the citizens. Our taxes are going to skyrocket, and this is a House bill I do not support. I believe we can work with CMS to help our children get good education. I mean, they get good education now through the schools, but I think we can work with them to make things better. I do not oppose charter schools because I do feel that gives parents other choice if they choose not to send their children to CMS. So just in short, I'm just against HB 514.
Mr. Hickman?
House Bill 514 was rushed through our town board before the citizens even knew what it was. I spoke to many people. Nobody knew what House Bill 514 was. I stood up and immediately opposed it for the simple fact that it's economically not feasible. It's not an option. Some people that are in favor of House Bill 514 say it's a good option. An option that you can't exercise is not an option. We might as well have an option to purchase the Taj Mahal. We're not going to do that either. So everything that I said that would happen about House Bill 514 after the board endorsed it, which I did not vote for, has happened. There was retaliatory action by CMS. It's just not a good bill at all, and if I'm elected, I will immediately hold town meetings to get further input from our citizens and make them aware of what the bill entails. As Ms. Hoover said, I'm not against charter schools. I'm against the town of Matthews running a charter school, and you need to look no farther than Cornelius and Huntersville to see they've come to the same realization that it's not economically possible to do.
Thank you. Group 2. Your question is with regards to development, specifically commercial development. In Matthews, we have a lot of breweries, wine bars, and restaurants, but not a lot of retail of any type in the downtown block area. What role should the town commission play in attracting retailers to invest in our downtown area? Do you propose replacing large companies like Family Dollar and Harris Teeter to boost employment in town, or pushing for more locally owned, smaller businesses? Ms. DeMint?
Thank you. When it comes to retail and merchants in our downtown area, the government needs to bring opportunities to people to have a successful business. I don't think any of us wants a government that tells a private sector property owner or business owner exactly what they can do. When we first started building up downtown, yes, there were more breweries and bars than I had wanted, but as you see, it's working. Things are organically growing. We have Great Harvest Bread Company. We have pizza places. We have barbecue and coffee shops. So we need to create opportunities, and we also need to realize that Matthews is bigger than just the core downtown area. Our economic engine is really that of the larger stores and the Costco's and things like that out in the 17 square miles. So in our core downtown, it will bring different businesses than the larger area.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
Thank you so much. This is one of the reasons I'm running. Matthews lost good retail in Family Dollar when it closed. Harris Teeter does another good resource for us. But the town of Matthews and the commissioners and the mayor, new mayor, mayors, whichever is appointed, have to look at bringing more jobs other than restaurants, beer shops, wineries. We need to bring some jobs to the town of Matthews where people can retire, have good income, as other cities has attracted Valentine and those areas. We still have some land that is available out near 485 and Independence on those four corners that could be very attractive. We don't have a 5-star hotel here in the town of Matthews, and we need that with the sports complex where people come and have banquet And as if I'm elected a commissioner, I'll work to that end to bring good jobs that are affordable. People could retire with good income. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trufano?
Good evening, everyone. Diversity. Diversity is a word you hear that always seems to pertain to culture, but it has so many other aspects. Diversity in business, diversity in art, diversity in music, and we don't have a diverse downtown right now. Now, how do we get that? Well, we have to make it a place that is attractive to them to come. Safe and walkable areas, adequate parking, facilities nearby to support them. But as far as on the broader scope of bringing in businesses from out of town, I have formed 4 businesses myself, and also through venture capital. It's featured in Entrepreneur Magazine. I know what it's like to go out and get business and bring it into the area, and that's what I would do aggressively. I would make a point to go out into the community, business community at large, and give them incentive and a reason to come to Matthews. Thank you.
Thank you. Group 3. Government, transparency, and conflicts of interest is your topic. Government transparency is an issue of concern in this election. Excuse me. In particular, the issue has arisen regarding the widening of John Street proposed by the NCDOT. Concern has been expressed that some elected officials were paying lip service to the fact the majority of the residents in town oppose this project, but we're not aggressively advocating the opposition to the project to the North Carolina Department of Transportation. True or not, this perception erodes confidence in government. What steps do you believe are necessary, and what policies would you implement to guarantee and advance public access to government information and sources to avoid this kind of problem in the future?
We've delayed the John Street project for a multitude of reasons. I don't feel there was any deception whatsoever or lack of transparency. The project has been delayed so that we can try to divert traffic around Matthews instead of through Matthews. For example, the widening of Independence that's been planned for 30 years might come to fruition in the next 3 or 4. McKee Road Extension, which is a continuation of Ballantyne Commons. Ballantyne Commons turns into McKee, where it currently dead ends at Pleasant Plains, will be punched through to John Street so that people can go through to John Street. The first thing they can do is get on 485, and the first exit off 485 go in that direction is Independence Boulevard. And then the Weddington Road interchange is something we're working on to also divert the Union County traffic or the cut-through traffic to please go around Matthews first. And so we've delayed John Street.
Mr. Crosby?
That question was about transparency, correct?
Correct. The question was, what steps do you believe are necessary, and what policies would you implement to guarantee and advance public access to government information and sources to avoid this kind of problem in the future? And I can give Mr. Miller another chance if need be, but you did a great job explaining what the commission did.
Okay. I think public access to government information is critical to have an informed electorate. We have the ability in this country to go to our open town meetings and question commissioners using the 4-minute period, and we can access public records fairly easily. And I just appreciate the fact we live in a town that we can do that. As a commissioner, I would hope that we could give you guys more access as far as records and time. But the big thing about public access is, as citizens, it's important to come to us with questions, and then hopefully we can simply answer them.
Thank you. Mr. McCool?
First, I want to talk about the John Street widening. Just because it's been delayed 6 years doesn't mean it's dead. So we need to make sure that that project does not happen to our town. Second off, we need to make sure that people are able to come to our meetings. Not everyone's been able to come on a Monday night at 7 p.m. It's just not feasible for some families. So we need to make sure that we're going to people and we're actively seeking out what people feel and not what the board feels. We need to be more transparent and do what the people need, not what we need.
Group 4, you've waited, and now it's your turn. Your question to begin this evening is on crime and community. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department recently announced its intent to partner with the Department of Public Health to work on addressing the root causes of poverty in order to tackle the city of Charlotte's crime. Given that the city of Charlotte is only a few miles away from our town, how will you, as an elected official, encourage these types of collaborative partnerships, such as working with the Department of Public Health, to improve public safety in Matthews? Are there additional ideas that you would like to see considered and implemented to address the root causes of crime, such as poverty, mental health, addiction, and homelessness? Ms. Garner?
Well, first, I'd like to say that poverty is not a crime. Mental health is not a crime, but we can't, crime doesn't stop at town borders, right? So crime is going to come from Matthews into other towns and from other towns into Matthews. To do that, we need to work closely with the county commission and with the county health department, with area agencies. Have a working relationship with the city of Charlotte, with other cities, and then have outreach with our police department. Our Matthews Police Department starts their salaries at $38,000 a year, which is not a living wage. We need to increase their wages, increase the capacity of our police department, and increase the training so that they know how to work with people with mental health issues and people that are living in poverty, giving them options to work their way out of poverty.
Mr. Urban?
I would hope that the religious institutions, which we have a lot of in the town of Matthews, would be outgoing and collaborating with the town and helping. That's the first order, working with religious organizations. From the standpoint of our suburb to the west, Charlotte, two different games. They have a lot larger population than we have, a much smaller community. I will say this town board and the board previously has been very active in the issue of crime and life safety, and I would like to put out kudos to our new chief of police, Clark Pennington. He has come here in the last year and a half with very fresh ideas, cracking down on crime at a variety of levels, and has brought a whole new data analysis foresight to how we deal with crime issues in the town of Matthews. So I think we're going to see vast improvements over the past, but at the same time, I think it's moving against the community to get engaged and involved in these issues of homelessness and poverty and things of that nature. We've been very blessed in the fact that we don't seem to have that prevalent at this stage in the game, but it could occur.
Mr. Bland?
Crime, it's not nearly the problem it is in the town of Matthews for a number of different reasons. One, our population, we're a much more affluent community. Another thing is from going back, way back when the Matthews Police Department was founded and set up, we pushed to have our own police department with its own dispatch. And these are things that's made a big difference here, is because the Matthews Police, you call them the city of Charlotte or the county, they may show or it may take a long time to get here. One thing that I push and I will continue to push, one of the issues that I believe is important, is that we need to see to it that response times from both our emergency and from the police continues to be, that's something we need to work on, so that when you pick up the phone and you call, whether it's a heart attack, someone's breaking in your house, you know that someone's going to be there shortly. And I've talked to Chief Pennington, and that's something that he's studying and looking at very closely, and it's something that I want to continue to stress and keep working on, but I think it's important for everybody in the town.
Thank you. Going back to group one, now that you've rested and you're ready for round two. Your question is on commercial development. In order to attract investment to a small town, innovative ideas such as incubators are increasingly being used to provide business support services and resources tailored for young companies, usually for free or subsidized prices. This may include physical space. The goal is to nurture entrepreneurial firms through the startup phase to give them a better chance to survive and grow. Business incubators, providing physical space, have been implemented in towns like Burnsville, North Carolina, a small town in the mountains, as well as other small towns in North Carolina with success. Is this kind of approach to attracting new startup retailers to invest in opening up business in our downtown something Matthews should seriously consider? If not, what are some other options to consider?
For many years, we have had our Economic Development Committee in place, and we've been working on strategies in order to bring retail businesses into town. An incubator is a good idea. It is a functional idea. Typically, you do that with a university in conjunction with the businesses. But we have worked on other avenues within Matthews. The Red Brick Partnership has been extremely successful in Matthews in bringing in businesses. We've had folks come into Matthews on the north end after developers came in and built that area. And I think that we're seeing a synergy develop in the downtown area. As far as what we can do, I think we just need to keep working through the EDAC and encourage businesses to come to Matthews. We have some areas that we need to address with our larger businesses at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Bash?
Thanks. So I think it's a great idea and one that's worth exploring. And I like it for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that it's outside the box, right? I mean, we just need to get creative when we're talking about the development of our own town. And so being able to look at innovative ideas is a great way to spend the time and resources. The other thing is we're not doing this alone. We're not the first people out of the box on this. So the fact that there are other cities that have explored this already means we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's worth talking and seeing what worked, what didn't work, and then seeing if we can model that for our own town. Because just because someone else does it doesn't mean it'll work here or that it's right for us, but it certainly is worth exploring.
Thank you. Ms. Hoover?
Development is inevitable. There's nothing we can do about that. I do believe the municipalities that she mentioned, if it's working for them, then why not, meet with them and see what's working and talk with them and learn. If we can learn from what's worked for them, then it could work for us. We just have to have smart development, and we have to listen to the needs of the new business owners that want to come into our town and get their input and just work with them as well, because it's just the best way, I think, to handle. Just got to work together as a team.
Early in my first term, in my third term now, then Mayor Jim Taylor asked me to serve on the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and I've been doing that ever since I've been elected, essentially. I think we need to move beyond simple retail jobs, bartenders and retail, and we need to encourage real high-paying jobs here, things like high-tech jobs, manufacturing. We certainly need to have some additional use of the Family Dollar space that's kind of sitting idle right now. So those are the kind of jobs that I hope to entice to come here, not necessarily more retail, although that's nice, but we need some high-paying living wage jobs. And I think we should do that in conjunction with nearby towns, Indian Trail, Stallings, and I do favor an incubator approach. We have discussed that in the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and that's something I'd like to do. Thank you.
Group 2, your question deals with crime and community. In 2002, the founder of the Matthews Free Health Clinic, Gail Dokes, once said, "The poor in Matthews are hidden." The town has grown immensely since 2002, and certain areas that were once hidden are now used regularly to travel through town, such as Morningwood Drive in the trailer park and East Charles Street near the Sportsplex in the Crestdale community. These areas are generally run down and see more than their fair share of a police presence. A sense of community and pride in one's neighborhood can have a positive effect on crime prevention and a sense of community. If elected, how do you plan to engage those residents They want to be a voice for change in their neighborhoods. And how would you measure improvement in these neighborhoods?
With anything, you always want to be able to measure that improvement. So that would come from visual looking, and it would also come from feedback from the community from within. We want everyone to have a voice, and that's what I like to do. And I have taken many Saturdays and been riding in my own car with people who live in different areas so I can see what they see. We have sidewalk gaps that will help. So we have, as a board, have done many things to make ourselves available to all people. We're trying to make this town more walkable. We're streaming our Facebook Live sessions with some commissioners. We're recording and putting on YouTube. We are trying to reach people where they are. Coffee with the commissioner, breakfast with the mayor. We're trying to make ourselves accessible to them so that we can hear from them and help them and try to meet their needs.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
Yes, I'm glad I got this question on crime. I'm an ex-highway patrolman for over 30 years, retired captain. And community, I'm strongly believing in police community and a police presence. And I can say that Matthews has done that, and I'm very pleased. I pastor church, Mount Moriah, on Crestdale Road, so I'm one of those roads where we have seen the traffic improve or increase. Also, in the near future, there is going to be a Crestdale Heritage Trail, 10-foot wide, from Town Hall all the way to Crestdale Road. And then it's going to go along Crestdale Road all the way back down to the sports complex. And I'm proud to say that we have been approved and have received $250,000 from Representative Bill Brawley. I see him here, and also Mr. Bishop, which when they was in legislature, they allotted $250,000 for the improvement of Crestdale Road. And we recently met with the town and the mayor to make sure that Crestdale Road is going to be a part of that. And we're right behind the sports complex and all of this fast, rapid growth.
Thank you. Mr. Trefano?
Well, crime and solution of crime is very complex because it takes into account multiple economic stratas and different upbringings, different cultures. But in order to alleviate it or mitigate it the best as possible is to provide opportunities for these people that find that they don't have any other way to bring in sustenance other than through crime. So one of the things we need to do, and this ties back to economic development, is provide the jobs and the environment necessary for these people to develop into what they could be as functioning and responsible citizens. So having said that, that is one of the primary objectives that I would like to accomplish, and that is to go out into the business community and enrich our business community here to provide good paying jobs and to allow people that are in poverty and feel that they are susceptible to crime to have an opportunity to advance and move up. Thank you.
Thank you. Group 3. Your question is on residential development. Over the last 2 years, the economy has rebounded, and there are new housing developments being built everywhere, including Matthews. Recently, a consensus has developed that has become too expensive for people such as nurses, police officers, teachers, and office administrative type jobs for those people to live here in Matthews, as well as work here in Matthews. In fact, most people who work in Matthews do not live in Matthews. The median family income for a Matthews resident, according to the federal government in 2017, was $76,007. The January 2019 report, issued by the Town of Matthews Housing Planning Board, found that of the new homes approved for construction between 2010 and 2017, that only 28 of 280 homes that were built were valued at $200,000 or less. This is the threshold amount of affordable for those making that median income of $76,000. In the last 24 months, 6 residential projects have been approved that are adjacent to or within 6 miles of the downtown area. All 6 developments have price points for those homes beginning at $400,000 or more. If you are elected, how would you approach developers who prefer to build only upper middle class priced housing developments to include housing options with lower starting price points so that people can afford to live, work, and play in Matthews? Mr. Miller?
Thank you. The cost of land makes it difficult for developers to make the numbers work, but it is achievable. I would suggest, or I feel that smaller homes can provide other options, particularly in the quadrant over by 485 and Old Monroe Road, otherwise known as John Street. I think that some development can be done there. I happen to be the only one running who provides affordable housing. I manage 109 affordable housing units. I don't own them all, but I do manage them. We brought up a minute ago Morningwood, and we have Aurora over there. There are affordable homes in the area, and there are opportunities for people to live nearby. It's just a matter of what they're used to. But I believe smaller homes is the answer.
Thank you. Mr. Crosby?
Smaller homes is definitely a part of the solution, but also density is also part. Increased volume of housing, different types of housing from condos to apartments to small units to large units will naturally bring down the price. Increased volume in the market will help that as well. The key is we got to determine what is affordable, but we also don't want to dive into the idea of that. We don't want to dive into subsidized housing, which is something we need to restrain towards, we need to stay away from. I don't want to raise taxes for subsidized housing here in Matthews. But that being said, we do need to increase the volume so that our police officers and our workers can live here in Matthews.
Well, you shouldn't have to earn a 6-figure salary to live in our great town. And I've been talking about this with people who I've seen on the campaign trail who say, they make X amount of dollars and they can't afford to live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Even if we have smaller housing, those apartment units are very expensive. They're $1,100 a month, $1,200 a month. That's still very not affordable for someone who's making less than $40,000 a year. So first, we need to raise how much people are making in our town who work for our town. And second, we need to work with developers to make sure that we're doing the right thing to make sure they're building their the affordable housing that everyone needs.
Thank you. Group 4. Your question is on education. Given the status of House Bill 514 and the town of Matthews as it currently stands, if you are elected and the commission votes to move forward to build a Matthews residents-only charter school, how do you propose to build this school in the town of Matthews without substantially raising taxes on the residents?
Since House Bill 514 was passed, and since I first heard about it, I've been I stand against it. I spoke at the town meeting and do not believe that's something that the residents of Matthews, first of all, can afford. We're talking about people not being able to afford to live here. We would have to raise our taxes to have our own school system. If I'm on the board, I would request that we rescind our support for House Bill 514. Charter schools will segregate, a municipal charter school will segregate our schools and will create a system that is not the quality of system that I would like. I'd like to go to the people that live in Matthews and talk to them and about what they believe in. I would go to the people of Matthews and ask them what they believe in. I would get them involved at town council meetings because I've heard over and over and over again that parents do not want a municipal charter school. If it comes down to taxes paying for this charter school, we would have to get rid of other line items in the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Urban?
We're not going to be building a municipal charter school. A lot of misinformation about House Bill 514 and what's happening, but let's be honest about this. Mecklenburg County has gone through 5 superintendents in 8 years. If they can't get their house in order, we need to be protecting our house. House Bill 514 was a method to protect our house. in part of that, if you all recall and go back, I actually made a substitute motion or resolution and help with Sean Strain back to CMS that would have lifted House Bill 514 under certain conditions. I made a proposal to that, and they completely reneged on it. I offered CMS an option. I said, why don't you embrace charter schools as a part of the school program itself and embrace that as well? And they refused to acknowledge it as well. So it's not like we haven't tried from that aspect of it, but frankly, we will not be going any school charters in Matthews.
Mr. Bland?
Well, I think your question supposes that there was a vote by the council that said we were going to build it.
Correct.
And I don't think there's any way around a tax increase if that is in fact what happens. And I think it's disingenuous to argue otherwise. Now we can get other sources, revenue, things that I support and would encourage if elected. But I think that this measure of charter schools is a last resort. If forced to do that by the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, and if we can't work something out with them, I'm a firm believer that we can in fact work with them and reach a reasonable compromise and something that makes sense for everybody. I stand ready, willing, and able to work with them, and I hope they will accept the challenge that we give them to do that. So.
Thank you. And I believe, Ms. Garner, you had a statement. You had motioned for a rebuttal or an additional statement.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that when John Urban and Sean Strain came up with their resolution to eliminate House Bill 514, they took it. The school board did take it to Charles Jeter, who is the lawyer for CMS, and there were portions of their suggestion that are illegal according to North Carolina legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Urban?
Doesn't mean you can't go to Raleigh and talk about those foibles in the law and make those changes to make it beneficial for Matthews.
Thank you. Group number one, your question is on the topic of government transparency and conflicts of interest. If you are elected, how would you combat the image that has begun to surface that some business owners in the town of Matthews have conflicts of interest that create an unfair advantage when seeking approval of projects or funding for projects, such as the approval of a residential development like that on Trade Street at the entrance to the Greenway, or the approval and use of funds that are under the control of the Red Brick Partnership, which is a nonprofit that was created to help support local businesses?
Well, first, I don't believe there is a conflict of interest, and I think that's an insinuation that's incorrect and unfair. We have people on our council who work in this community, and when they have a conflict of interest, they recuse or are excused from debate on that issue. And I have never seen anybody on the council abuse that. Now, there are some situations where you don't have to be excused or recused, but it is important for you to tell the public what your conflict might be. Now, in this particular case for Red Brick Partnership, I stand behind Red Brick. We've been working on this for a number of years. I think people are saying it's not transparent because there was an issue with the 501(c) status that was resolved. It was an error. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. And it's unfair to look at people on the council and those business partners as being non-transparent.
Okay. Mr. Bailey, I have one follow-up for you, just to make sure that the audience has all the information necessary to understand your answer. Mm-hmm. If you could explain more about the issue related to the 501c3 that caused the conflict of interest discussion to begin.
The 501(c) status paperwork was completed, and unfortunately the lawyer who was handling that situation did not get the paperwork turned in to the state.
To the state or to the IRS? Do you recall?
I would have to go back and look.
Okay, go ahead.
It may be one or both.
Okay.
So once that was discovered, that paperwork was promptly submitted, and the status is acceptable at this point. So again, like I say, we're all human, mistakes are made.
Thank you for that explanation. Mr. Bash?
Sure, thank you. So I can't speak to some of the specifics that were raised. So let me just kind of speak in general terms about transparency. So I spent most of my professional life as a lawyer. Part of that was advising the company I worked for on ethics and compliance. So transparency was a huge part of my professional life. Obviously, as a public entity, there are laws on the books already for transparency. That's not to say that we can't look at how to improve those. So to the extent there are issues, whether they are perceived or actual, it doesn't matter. But perhaps this council needs to take a look at what those current laws are and figure out if we need to strengthen them so that we can provide the appropriate level of transparency and restore any faith in our council.
Thank you. Ms. Hoover?
First, I'd like to address the ethics. Recently, I just learned of a project that's been under consideration for quite a while. And I have an email here that where a developer is requesting that a commissioner attend a meeting between the planning board member and to choose a site planner and or developer. And this email also went to the work email address of this commissioner. So if you want to talk ethics and conflict of interest, why is this commissioner being contacted over this? And then why are they using their private and work email accounts if they're so transparent?
Thank you. Mr. Higdon?
Yes, I'm all for transparency. Our board recently voted to have our board meetings videotaped in an indexable way so that the public can go back and look at them. I think we've done a pretty good job of recusing ourselves when necessary. Mr. Bailey alluded to making sure that everybody knows about who works where, and in today's paper there's an article that insinuates that my wife may have done something incorrectly. My wife does work for a large law firm. She's here tonight. She's a paralegal. She has absolutely nothing to do with rezoning cases whatsoever, so I didn't feel there was a need to recuse myself because it's a red herring, has nothing to do with her job whatsoever. So more information from my opponent.
When you made that statement with regards to your opponent, I assume that you are referring to Mr. Bailey?
That is correct, Mayor Paul Bailey.
Mr. Bailey, you are entitled to a rebuttal in response to Mr. Higdon's statement.
Well, I think there's three levels when you're sitting at the dais. First is to be excused because you have a direct conflict of interest. The second is to be recused because you believe that the circumstances do not allow you to fairly evaluate the situation. And I have always, in 18 years of when I was on the school board, my wife worked for CMS, I always made it clear, every time we took a vote that affected either my company, my wife working at CMS, or anything else, I made that clear to everyone that was on that board and made sure it was clear to the public that this situation exists and it's not going to impact my decision on this issue.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Higdon, you may make a rebuttal.
The law firm where my wife's works is Robinson, Bradshaw, and Henson. They represent many, many projects here in town, and I've voted for some of them and I've voted against others. So clearly there's no conflict of interest.
Thank you. Group 2. Your question is on commercial development, in particular, transportation. The Silver Line for the light rail is scheduled to come through Matthews in 2023. Whether or not it is on time may or may not have anything to do with the town of Matthews, as we all know. If you are elected, and the light rail with the silver line makes it through the town of Matthews. How do you envision our town best utilizing and capitalizing on this opportunity?
That is something I don't know. I would need a crystal ball to know that. Our terms are only 2 years if re-elected, and I hope that I have everyone's support and am re-elected. We will have time to plan. Also, in many of these questions, what I will do if re-elected is work collaboratively with this board. I will not be on it as an individual to drive my individual opinion, but we will work collaboratively as a board, get the public's input, and then we will come up with the best solution. So for me to sit here in 60 seconds and give you a brilliant idea, I can't do that. And if anybody does, I would question it.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
Thank you. The silver line, the light rail is inevitable. I think we can look and see that it's ran from Pineville all the way up to UNC Charlotte, and now thinking about going up to Davidson. It's a must. It's got to come east. Got to come through Matthews, and now even Monroe now is looking for that. But as the town grows and the city grows, we're going to have more better transportation where people can park and ride. Now the east and the west rail is supposed to come to Matthews and go all the way out to the airport. That'd be a wonderful thing for people to ride the rail to the airport from Matthews to Charlotte and out to the airport and back and forth. So it's inevitable that it's going to happen and come, and we welcome that. And it's going to come real close to downtown Matthews, to the entertainment system that all of you see that's being developed now on Matthews Hill Road, and they're growing really fast. And that rail is going to come right down through there and go over to the school over at Levine School College over there.
Thank you. Mr. DeFon?
Transportation goes both ways. Takes people out, takes people in. I take public transportation every morning, 65X from Matthews to downtown, and we need people to come to Matthews, not people to leave Matthews to go to work. The Silver Rail and all transportation systems need to have the ability to bring people to Matthews, and in order to do that, there has to be something here for them to come to. And that is good paying jobs, and that is also a diverse business environment downtown. But also, if you notice, our CAT system is really taking people from Matthews to some other place. What we need to do is develop some kind of system in coordination with CATs where we can bring people from point A to point B within Matthews. So we need to be able to accommodate the population so that they can have transportation needs met in order for them to live a productive life here in town.
Thank you. Group 3. Your question is on crime and community. The Matthews Police Department currently has 58 officers on its payroll, and it has had 58 officers on its payroll since 2002. At the last budget approval, the Matthews Police Department requested funding for 6 more officers to ensure that matters of public safety could be adequately addressed by the department, since the town had grown from approximately 17,000 people to over 30,000 people. The town board voted to fund only 3 officer positions, not 6. As a result of this population growth and the addition of 3 instead of 6 officer positions, what other options and resources would you present to the Matthews Police Department to help them improve public safety?
Well, due to the growth of the town of Matthews, yes, we need more resources. We need more cars, we need more officers, etc. You are correct in that. But also due to the revaluation of the town and everybody's home, we have to be sensitive to the tax base and fiscally responsible. We are following the recommendations of the new police chief. We're doing the best we can. We also, rather than buying new cars, we added, due to Paul Bailey's recommendation, some motorcycle cops who can be hidden in downtown Matthews when people straight through and their ladders fall off. on the speed humps, things like that.
Okay.
So we can give tickets. But according to safehome.org, Matthews is the 7th safest city in North Carolina. So I think that we're still keeping the hometown feel and providing them the resources. We're also growing in fire department, so you have to maintain a balance in that regard.
Thank you. Mr. Crosby?
Funding our police department, fire, and EMS is one of the most critical needs that we have in this town. It is our base need, and everything else comes after that, in my opinion. As far as funding and increasing the number, I have to agree with Mr. Miller that I think we're doing a relatively good job. We are a very safe community. Adding those 3 police officers, I believe, was needed, but we do have to compare that to what we pay in tax. With the reval, a lot of people's taxes are going to go up, and some people can't afford to really have those taxes go up. So we have to equate those two things. A couple of options that we have is almost a private-public partnership when it comes to policing. Carmel Christian School did a very good job, I believe, on this by having Matthews Police help in that area. But the big thing is we just have to equate the taxes with the amount of services that we provided, and we make sure that the services we provide can help all of our citizens.
Thank you. Mr. McCool?
Yes, our town is very safe, and as Mr. Miller said, it's the 7th safest in the state. But I think the people who know the best are the police department, and when they come to us saying that they have a need, we should think long and hard about what that need is without shooting them down, because I think they know what's best for our town and for our police than the commissioners do. Thank you.
Thank you. Group 4. Your question is on development and transportation. There's been a lot of discussion in the community regarding the growth in Matthews that has resulted in the traffic going from bad to worse. This is not just the downtown streets of John and Trade, but also on the roads that are connecting to the downtown Matthews streets. Would you be willing to consider innovative alternatives to automobiles, such as street-ready vehicles, golf carts, or even a reinstatement of the Matthews shuttle bus that the town once had? Ms. Garner?
Yes, I would consider anything that's innovative. I think that right now we're stalled with our transportation ideas. We concentrate on wider is better, and really that's creating more congestion than we're prepared for. So adding mobility hubs, having electric scooters, electric bikes accessible, having sidewalks that are functional for transportation other than instead of recreation is important. We need to start planning so that our neighborhoods connect through connector streets, and we don't just have major streets as how we get around town.
Thank you. Mr. Urban?
Ms. Garner is correct on the connectivity. One thing this town has done a very poor job of, and it's running in the 60s and 70s in planning, is lots of cul-de-sacs and lack of connectivity, which bottlenecks major arterial ways. But I'm sure that the members of the board today, members of the board previous, Jim Taylor, and maybe even Lee Myers, have always harped about MAT, the Matthews Area Transit. I really believe that the bright little red trolley running around from the entertainment sportsplex and back into downtown would be a wonderful loop, free to people to use and utilize during the week and weekends. Those kind of out-of-the-box thinkings, which is really just sort of adds to the hometown feel, would really be a good way of getting people out of their automobiles and on their public transportation. But capitalism is a wonderful thing. People are going to find ways to work the system a little bit, provide opportunities for different types of modes of transportation. And we're going to see that. The Silver Line's one part of it. Our own internal transit thing will be another part of it. So I think there's diversification in transportation will come about and will help in the needs of the congestion we all face.
Thank you. Mr. Bland?
Yes, I'm a firm believer that we need to discourage people from going through Matthews, and need to encourage people to get around Matthews. And there's a lot of different ways we can go about doing it. I think by making the town much more walkable, I think that's one of the things that goes way back when Ted Kiker, former commissioner that I was served with, came up with the sidewalk ordinance to encourage people to have more walking, people to get places by walking around in town. I think that the town has grown and done a better job. Idea with bike trails, I think is great. Connectivity. I like the idea about the shuttle bus getting around Matthews, so that no matter where you are in the downtown area or in the new entertainment area or the shopping centers, you should be able to get around inside Matthews without having to wait 2 hours for a bus or go to Charlotte to get a bus to come back out to Matthews. So I think we need to look at this real hard, and there's a lot of good solutions. We just need to put our hands to work together, like all folks have said.
Thank you. I'm going to change up the order a little bit, and I'm going to skip group 1 and go to group 2. Group 2, your questions on campaign finance. At what point, if any, following your election to the commission, should that occur, should you be required to disclose whether or not an applicant in front of you petitioning for something from the town of Matthews donated to your campaign?
There are campaign finance reports that have to be filed, which is part of public record. Developers are just like any other business owner that want good people on the board. They want them in our economic development advisory committees, the Chamber of Commerce. Any business owner, any resident is going to want good people, and they want to support good people. Just because someone makes a contribution, I think it's very unfair to insinuate that they are being bought off. I don't think anyone on this board has ever been bought off by anyone, and I can't imagine that they would be. Campaigns are expensive. You want good people, and it costs a lot. Signs are expensive, media is expensive. We need to get our stories out while we're running, what our intent is, and any citizen has a right to contribute to that. But if someone is doing something unethical and is being bought off, that's a different issue. So I think if a public sector resident, a private citizen has contributed and they come up with a problem, do we have to disclose that too? Let's just think about what we're asking and what is available.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
I think it's very important that you make sure who's contributing to your campaign. I think it's important that when you take PAC money from certain people or developer money, that you make sure that it's transparency, that they're not perceived as buying you off so that you can get a vote. I think it's very important when you receive money for a campaign that you make sure that you stay above and beyond whenever you're receiving the money. It's all recorded. We have to turn it in, and we've already turned in the first part. The next part is at the end of the year when we turn in. But I don't think it's fair for a company or developers that would give money to commissioners or the mayor or anyone in hopes of maybe giving. I'm not saying that happened, but I'm just saying I don't think that would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tafano?
This ties into the concept of total transparency. I kind of like to use the phrase hyper-transparency. I'm one for complete videography and audio recording of every single meeting that takes place in town. And also in terms of reporting your finances. Yes, it's on the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections site, but why can't it be on the Matthews Town site? Why does it have to be so difficult for some citizen to go find out what one of the commissioners has received for contributions? As a matter of fact, we have sitting incumbent commissioners who haven't filed financial reports with the Board of Elections yet for this election cycle. So if they're not even reporting to the Board of Elections, how are the citizens going to even know about what their campaign contributions were? So it's very important to understand that total transparency is essential for a vibrant democracy, and I believe in it with all my heart.
Thank you. I see no requests for rebuttals.
I'll take one.
Mr. Miller?
I've ran 6 campaigns and I funded every single one myself. The fact is, other than a $50 or $100 donation, but the fact is, you only have to file a report if you spend more than $1,000. On my 6th campaign, I've already got 150 signs to start with. I'll buy another 100 because you know what? Everybody loses signs. But you don't have to file a report until you spend over $1,000.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hoover?
Okay, what Commissioner Miller said is correct, but I think what Mr. Stefano may be, no, I'm not speaking for him, I'm just saying, if you saw the report from WBTV, they even ran a report on it, how one commissioner has not filed a 2018 mid-year semi-annual and the year-end annual report, and this is they just haven't done it.
All right, thank you. My next question goes to Group 3. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bailey?
I'd like to ask, in the spirit of the town of Matthews and how we've always been, why wouldn't you pick the phone up and call that person and say, hey, are you aware of this situation? I mean, that's all I got to say.
Mr. McCool?
I find that slightly hypocritical coming from our mayor, who put out an op-ed after me, Mr. Tavano, and Mr. Higdon said that our signs are being stolen, and instead of saying that that act was wrong, he called us out and said we had little chance of getting elected, and was horribly not nice to someone who's, that's not working together. So don't be hypocritical on this board.
Okay. We're going to... This brings me to my next question, which actually will not be addressed to a particular group, but is instead addressed to the person or persons who run Preserve Matthews. There have been a number of organizations that have cropped up during this election campaign that even I, since 2002 and moving to Matthews, have not seen. I would like to give the opportunity, I see Ms. Garner has the microphone, to explain Preserve Matthews, what it is and what it stands for.
So Preserve Matthews is a group of basically Matthews residents that formed organically in 2016 when we found out about the John Street widening. There were about 6 or 7 of us that got together in a room in a business in Matthews and expressed concern about what the widening of John Street would do to the town of Matthews. From there, we came up with the name Preserve Matthews, and we formed an online Facebook group. Since then, we have about 1,000 members, and we use the Facebook group to discuss all of the issues that are coming around to Matthews. So it could be transportation, it could be education. Right now, there's a lot of conversation about the elections. It's an open group. We've kind of waxed and waned on the rules a little bit, but everybody's welcome to join. Everybody's welcome to join the conversation. We have several rules about staying civil, but beyond that, it's just really an informal group of people concerned about Matthews.
Thank you. My next question is going to go to Group 1. Pedestrian safety has become an issue of paramount concern in the downtown area, not just on Trade Street, but on the smaller side streets, such as Main Street. People are now taking these small, narrow streets to avoid congestion through the downtown. Speeding and running stop signs has become a daily occurrence, and with the absence of sidewalks in those areas, walking has become dangerous. If elected, what steps will you take to manage these specific traffic concerns, and how will you measure that success?
We have already initiated efforts to bring police officers into the downtown area, specifically on the side streets and on Trade Street, to slow the traffic down. We need to take the issue that we've talked about for 40 years, walkability in our community, seriously. And we're taking a focus on that by putting in multi-use paths. You may see one that went down Matthews Street. We have sidewalks down Matthews Street, and we will continue to try to enforce the speed of folks coming through town and put in multi-use paths predominantly in order to allow bikers and walkers to move through the community safely.
Mr. Bash?
Thank you. So I very much like that answer, and I'm going to piggyback on it for just a second. I think that when it comes to pedestrian safety, the key is visibility, right? We need to make sure that if the traffic recognizes it has to stop, and we need to make it as prominent as possible. In fact, we were talking about that just today. The issue is cost. It is unbelievably expensive to put in, raised streets, overhead lighting, etc. All things that would probably be extremely effective. And so it's a matter of just making sure that A, there's money to do that, and then proceed with that. I am actually terribly concerned with the red light running, though, by the way. That's a conversation I'd actually very much like to have with the police department. I don't know necessarily what we can do about that, but for instance, coming over here, this evening, there were 3 people that ran not just a yellow, but a blatant red. That's quite disturbing as a parent. I don't know the answer to that, but it's a conversation I'd like to have.
Thank you. Ms. Hoover?
Daily, I see cars run red lights along Independence and what I know as old 51, and it's scary. And I've been in 2 accidents, from people running red lights, so it's no fun. I do believe for a walkable community, we need more sidewalks and not just focused in downtown Matthews. We need them over across Independence, what people refer to as the forgotten side of Matthews. They need to be all around to be an actual walkable community. And I know there are just sidewalks are in discussion and in the planning, but we do need to follow through with the sidewalks for everyone. Safe bike lanes, keeping the streets clean for those bikers, and gotta just work together.
Thank you. Mr. Higdon?
As Mr. Bash alluded to, we were at a coffee with Commissioner event this morning, and we saw a 1970s Gremlin going about 60 miles an hour over the speed hump, which was kind of a Dukes of Hazzard type event. It was somewhat humorous because nobody got killed, but it really is kind of scary. Here's an area where I agree with our mayor. I think we've done a really good job of targeted enforcement. We're listening to our citizens. There's an effort right now for Main Street to get speed humps put in. So we're targeting, contrary to popular belief, our police department doesn't make a lot of money by writing tickets. So initially they're writing warning tickets to get people to slow down, and then they're enforcing. It is an area that we're very in tune with. We're listening to citizens, and we certainly are for enforcement.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bailey?
I appreciate the comments, John. We are working hard in that area. But the one thing that we do every year is we go to a planning conference and we talk about all these wonderful things that you're hearing up here. Sidewalks is one of them. And then we have all these grand ideas and we come back and we find out how much it's going to cost. And then that's when the work really starts. So I think Ben is correct. It costs money. It's tough. You can't do everything all at one time.
Group 2, your question is on development, specifically commercial development. Discussion was had earlier this evening with regards to businesses, and specifically with the downtown area. This question has to do with, I think Ms. Hoover called it the forgotten side of Matthews, and the areas that are outside the downtown area. What incentives, if any, should the town of Matthews put forward to lure some of the bigger companies to invest in the town of Matthews and bring those livable wages that have been the subject of tonight's debate?
I have heard that a couple of times tonight, that some people would give incentives. I think we all need to remember, though, it's very common to what we're talking about with the sidewalks, with raising salaries. There are a lot of grand ideas and it costs money. We are here to be a public servant and to be an advocate for the citizens, it's taxpayers' dollars that we're having to make very conscious and intentional decisions. And to give away taxpayers' dollars for an incentive to a business with the small town that we have of 17 square miles and 32,000 people, we don't have the money to do that at this point. For us to raise taxes enough to give incentives, I think that that would not probably be what most of the citizens would want us to do. We want great businesses in our town. We want to have opportunities for all kinds of businesses to be successful. And we want people to have choices of where they work and where they live. So we can't control everything, but we can make opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
Several years ago, almost 30 years ago, I was on the planning board with the city of Charlotte when I was a state trooper. And Independence Boulevard was slated to be widened as an expressway, which you see now is partially. And they are developing, as you stated, hopefully within the next 3 or 4 years, it will come all the way from where it is now all the way out to 485. Hopefully this will entice developers to come and look at those quarters that we have at 485 and Independence and also at John Street and 485. Hopefully this will help some of bring in new industry, new jobs there. Hopefully that will give people better wages, but I think that would make a tremendous difference. Matthews Hill Road in just a few years is going to go over 485, but there's going to be a bridge there. And it's going to cause us, someone to talk about walkability to the northern side of Independence there. It will have sidewalks where you can walk over the bridge as well as bike lanes to bring it through there as well too.
Thank you. Mr. Tufano?
Corporations are not just monolithic entities. They're composed of people. In order to make it comfortable for a business to come here and attractive for a business to come here, it has to be able to make certain that its employees are coming to an environment in which they're going to have a wholesome way of life. Now, in order to get businesses to come here, there's much more incentive than just financial incentives. In other words, a group of team effort between churches and community efforts and charities and local businesses and government all to come together and come up with a unified plan in order to present to outside businesses what this town is really all about and why it would be a comfortable place for their employees, not necessarily the company, but for their employees to come and live and enjoy life here.
Thank you. Ms. DeMint?
One thing I would like to explain is that leaders of this town for years, for decades, have been working very hard on our zoning ordinances. I think Crest Query maybe started the first zoning ordinances years ago. And through a lot of hard work and a lot of effort and a lot of planning and a lot of tweaking, we have zoning requirements, we have small area plans, and we're working on overlay plans. One thing that is so exciting for the future of this town is the entertainment district. That is a great blueprint and a great incentive for companies to come to us. They know what we want. It's taken years of planning. It's not just a thought. We have put these things together like a great quilt, and they know what we're looking for. They know the kinds of businesses and where in the town we want them. Those are all on the website, but our zoning ordinances, our small area plans, and hopefully overlay districts will be coming in the future too that will help all of that.
Thank you. Group 3. Your question is with regards to Stumptown Park and its use as a community resource. Stumptown Park is a wonderful amenity for the town of Matthews, but it is becoming too small for many of the events that it tries to host. What kind of options are available to expand the park and enhance it such that it is large enough to accommodate our newly enhanced town of Matthews size?
Stumptown Park is a little gem in the heart of Matthews. As far as accommodating more people, that's a good problem to have, but what we've talked about in the past is the purchasing of some of the surrounding land. For example, we already own the Matthews Free Medical Clinic, in case you don't know that. We own 2 houses behind Stumptown Park, and we've talked about buying some of the adjacent property to enlarge it. But in the more immediate future, what we would do would be move the band shell further back towards the sandy volleyball area and grade the grass a little bit more so that we could accommodate more people there.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Crosby?
I'm going to give a fairly similar answer to Mr. Miller. To expand, you just have to buy the property that is surrounding Stumptown Park. The town has a couple lots, I believe. If we want to expand it, we just got to make sure the price point is correct to buy those properties so that we can't. Moving the band stage back a little bit into the volleyball area, like you said, will give more room for citizens to sit and watch and have a very good Friday night watching a band. And then in the very, very short term, it's just we got to make sure we plan our events so that they can meet capacity, and we got to make sure that we are able to staff them with police and other services so that everyone has a good time.
Thank you. Mr. McCool?
I agree with what Jeff Miller said, and he said it's a good problem to have. But what we can do is, if we're not going to expand it, we can look into other park spaces. I know the board has voted to not build certain park spaces. That's been a controversy. And so we need to make sure that we have enough park spaces in our entire town, not just in downtown Matthews, but in our entire town, so people don't have to travel to downtown Matthews. The people who are on the east side of 74 can have more parks on their side, so they don't have to come to downtown Matthews and face all the traffic that we have. So it's about building more parks as well as expanding the ones we already have.
Okay. Thank you. Group 4, I'm going to start with you, but this question has been posed to all candidates. So each of you, if you could please give a yes or no answer and a very brief description as to why you said yes or no in response to this question. Remember, the audience gets fatigued and there are 13 of you, which means if you each take 1 minute, it's going to be a 13-minute answer. I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Bland. We're going to keep it moving down the line. If you are elected, will you support the development of 12 homes on the parcel of property that is adjacent to the Greenway that was subject to a contentious rezoning?
The question is, if it comes up for rezoning, is that what you're asking?
Let me make it more clear. Do you support 12 homes being...
That's not appeared in front of me. I haven't heard the benefit of having arguments from both sides of the question. I don't know, except to say I know what the result of it was, and it made sense to me that with the downtown park already there, I could see how that decision was reached, considering the cost involved. But as far as deciding on the zoning, that I haven't seen the presentation from either the developer or the surrounding property owners. No, I don't know that I would or wouldn't support it. I can't say without hearing.
Okay, so to make sure that I'm clear, it's an audience question, so I didn't have time to finesse it.
Okay.
He's an attorney, I know. But he's a candidate tonight, so I gotta give him the benefit of the doubt. He's been there for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
So the question is, do you support 12 homes being placed on that parcel of property that is adjacent to the Greenway that was the subject of the contentious rezoning petition? And again, remember, it's yes or no and the basis for your position.
Well, the basis is now be yes, I would support that. That's what the council voted to do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Urban?
It's a yes. That is a rezoning case that's already been done and voted upon. It meets the planning board recommendations. It meets the recommendations of the town ordinance and is good for downtown Matthews.
Ms. Garner?
At the risk of extending this conversation, are you asking, sorry, I feel like maybe the gist of the question is, if it weren't already passed, would you support it? Is that, or am I putting words into the question?
No, you're correct. What I didn't want to say was if it came up for rezoning, Because then the question becomes, as Mr. Bland put it, well, what's the new petition? So the question from this audience member is,
Do you guys want to go again?
do you need to go again? The question from the audience member, from one of your voters, is, as it stands now, there are 12 homes that are zoned to be placed on that parcel. And it did pass the commission. But it was the subject of a contentious discussion and vote. So this particular voter would like to know, do you support that placement of 12 homes?
No, I do not support that size of home, that level of density on that size lot.
Thank you. Mr. McCool.
No, absolutely not.
Mr. Crosby.
Okay, I just got to preface that I need to hear the arguments on this, but just very shortly, I would just say yes, because the town doesn't own the property and they don't have the right to decide what's on it.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
That ship has sailed. However, I voted against it.
Okay.
I thought it was too many homes. I voted against it, but I was in the minority.
Understood. Mr. Tofano?
And no, and in disclosure, I own the property next to the lot in question, and never once did I ever ask the developer not to build there. I just asked them to be in compliance with the community and to have reduced footprint in that area. I'm for development. I'm for increasing homes in the downtown area, but in a reasonable way. So the short answer is no, and those are the reasons. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
I'm on the planning board now. I remember when it came to the planning board, the petitioner had everything in order, and he applied for it to build those homes, and he followed by the letter. And the planning board, I was one of the ones that voted for yes for it to move forward to go to the commissioners.
The answer is yes, I did vote for it. If we look back in history, and this is something I said earlier, we've got to look at the whole picture and look back. In a downtown area, that is where you want your density. You want people to be able to walk and live. It's in your suburban areas where you want the large spread out lots. Yes, we need people to live, work, play, and pray in our downtown, and the only way to do that is to have houses they can live in. In the past, there were many houses in downtown Matthews.
I voted no and advocated that a park be put in that place, especially in light of Stumptown Park being too small. It's an exceptional piece of property. It deserves to be treated exceptionally. And I'd like to know what the price is. If I'm elected, I'll go back to the owner of the property and ask him how much you'll sell it for, because the price, contrary to popular belief, is not $1 billion if that's not going to be permanent. Thank you.
If I remember correctly, that's less than an acre and 12 homes on that. No, I would not support it.
Mr. Bash? Go ahead.
Thank you. So based on the price of the alternative and the average density, I would have supported it.
Okay. Mr. Bailey?
I supported the rezoning. It is much larger than an acre. I spent a great deal of time looking at the surrounding neighborhoods and comparing overlays of that property with other housing. And though you go in there and specifically you don't have 12,000 square feet, some of the lots may be 10,000 square feet. The bottom line is that's pretty close to most of the neighborhoods that we have in Matthews. That particular piece of property in the land use plan, he called, I think, originally for 27 units on that property. And we turned that down a number of years ago. So I think this is a good development. And yes, I would vote for it again, and I did my due diligence on that particular piece of property.
Yes, Mr. Higdon?
I want to be absolutely clear. There is no price known for the property. We never received a written offer from the owner of the property, so Mr. Bash and others have said it's too expensive. We don't know what the expense is because it's unknown. It has not been disclosed to the town.
Are there any other rebuttals? Okay. This question.
I do want to say one thing.
Yes, Mr. Bland?
I would just say that the reason why I was
Start again. Wait till you get the microphone.
The question is, I don't think you can legally come back and rezone the property. That's what you were basically asking. So I vote on the rezoning. I just don't think that you can legally do that for 3 years following the zoning unless they can sell it. But that's not what the question was.
I accept full responsibility for my unclear question, Mr. Bland. Mr. Urban.
And so since you're pulling off the hypotheticals, let's do the hypotheticals here.
Okay.
What if there were to be 20 affordable housing units placed in that location to allow people to live right in downtown that need the use of their car? Then what would people say?
So I have a follow-up with regards to that. When you are making the statement affordable housing, please define affordable.
Well, affordable from the standard is 30% of your income. But let's say we take your $76,000 number.
To be clear, that's not my number.
I know,
that's
but
the
that's
federal
number,
government's number.
that's the number you purported. That's correct. But let's take that $76,000 number and let's use that as a number and say we built 15 to 20 homes there that fit that formula. That's all.
If you built the homes to fit that formula, according to the Matthews Housing Planning Board report that was published in January of 2019, that price point is $200,000 or less, Mr. Urban.
That's correct.
So your statement is building 24 homes at the affordable level.
I don't know how the calcs would work, but I know that property 6 or 8 years ago, it was a 20+ unit project. The home prices would be a lot less than they are today because of the quantity. But I'm saying, you know, everybody's talking about affordable housing and attainable housing and things like that, where you wanted to have that availability is in the downtown core, where the conversation changed, and your hypothetical question about this rezoning changed if it was 20 homes that were purely, really affordable housing.
Thank you. Ms. Garner?
When you're talking about the rezoning that was several years ago in the same lot space, it included another acre, so it was more homes. It included more, I guess, townhomes as it was at that time, but it did include more space, so it's not the same equivalent. And then when you're talking about adding 20 townhomes, you're also talking about adding that many X number of cars right in front of the fire station, which is something to be taken into consideration as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to respond? Mr. Bailey?
The issue of attainable or affordable housing is difficult because we have to operate under the laws of North Carolina. Most of the municipalities that are doing this type of work now are doing it through a nonprofit direction. I'm involved in the Metrolina Mayors Coalition, which includes Greensboro, Charlotte, Raleigh, Wilmington, etc. And one of the items on our agenda is to approach the legislature about putting laws in place allowing municipalities more flexibility during rezoning so that we can see the development come into place and have housing that is of a lower cost, whether it's offset or whether it's materials or whatever, so that we can begin to have people achieve those $200,000 or less homes. I think another area that we need to look at is retaining the homes that we have in town and avoid the gentrification issue. We have a lot of homes that are affordable, and we need to keep them here. We need a good mixture of homes.
Thank you. This question is posed to all brand new candidates. So if you are currently serving or have served as a commissioner or the mayor, the question is not directed towards you. Sorry, Mr. Higdon, you're out. This question, as I said, is to all the brand new candidates. Activism is important. It's often the catalyst for change. As Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see. That being said, how do you take activism and cultivate it into action if you are elected? Ms. Hoover? Or I'm sorry, Mr. Bash, I'll start with you.
So I think the critical piece is two things. You want engagement. And activism certainly shows a level of engagement. And you want to make sure you're harnessing that in a positive way. And the second part of that And I think the way to make sure it is appropriately used is to make sure that that energy that has become so active is focused on a for Matthews agenda, right? That is our ultimate goal. We don't need to have individual agendas, not on the commission and not as citizens. We need to be looking at how to steward our town for the current and future generations.
Thank you. Ms. Hoover?
In my opinion, activism to me is standing up for something that you truly believe in, and you're going to put your heart and soul into it and do whatever it takes to follow through and do what you need to do to get it done. So to me, it's just standing up for what you believe in, and that's about it. I mean, it's what you feel, what you want to do, and that's what you stand up for.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley, I believe you're next.
I think I'm a former commissioner.
Oh, wait, you're right. I'm sorry. Mr. Tupano.
I believe that activism is essential for a vibrant and healthy democracy. I believe that in order to turn activism into action, it requires the ability to have someone in government to listen to the activists in order for that, whatever they're asking for, in order to be implemented. So consequently, there's two reasons why people are not active, really. It's apathy and despair. Apathy, we all have that. We just don't want to move. We've got kids to take to soccer. We've got whatever we need to do. But despair, it comes from when you don't have any hope that what you're being acted for is going to result in some kind of action being taken. So in order for an activist to have a proper reception, we need to have commissioners and elected officials that have open ears and hearts to the people and listen to them and become a citizen-centered democracy. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Crosby?
I consider myself a political activist, almost a full-time activist, and the key I have found in my experience of activism is a couple things. First off, quality organization, finding a goal that you can actually achieve and that is real, that can be seen, not by you, but by the people that are around you. The second thing is working and operating within the system that we currently have. In addition to being a full-time activist, I'm currently on the Board of Adjustment, which has given me some insights and knowledge of how the system works. Activism on its own doesn't actually turn into anything. You have to work to create policy, and then that policy becomes law. Activism, just running around in the street, is just a person running around in the street. You have to go to your meetings, you have to learn about the policy, then you have to advocate for it within a setting that can actually be accomplished. And that's the most important part of activism in my mind.
Thank you. Mr. McCool?
Activism isn't just one person, it's a group of people. And so to have true activism, you have to have multiple people. And what we need on our board is someone who is active in our community, who is active in our politics, to be a voice of the people, not a voice of himself.
Ms. Farmer?
I'm sitting here tonight because of activism. I jumped into Matthews politics when John Street, the super street, was going to take over my front yard for a tractor trailer turnaround. And there is nothing that will get you into local politics faster than thinking a swath of asphalt is going to take over your kid's playset. So for the past 3 years, I've been going around talking to people in Matthews and going door to door and really meeting my neighbors and meeting community members and taking that to the podium at town hall and speaking at town hall events. So taking activism into action, my first step was taking that to the podium. The next step is taking it here and then to the ballot box in November, and if elected, taking it to the dais.
Thank you. I think Mr. Bland's got question fatigue. All right, so this next question is for the current commissioners who are running for re-election. The question has to do with education House Bill 514, and CMS. CMS stated, following the passage of House Bill 514, that the result would be to move students, raise the taxes in the town of Matthews, reduce school choice for Matthews residents, as well as contribute to the increasing segregation of our schools. They also said that they would stop investing in our schools. With the passage bill of 514, which of these has actually occurred? The movement of students, the raising of taxes, reduced school choice, and school segregation. I'll begin with you, Mr. Bailey.
I'm not running for a commissioner position.
You are currently an incumbent, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to
What you
respond.
said, currently a commissioner seeking re-election is what you said.
I have question fatigue.
Okay, me too. None of those have occurred. And I wouldn't, excuse me, I wouldn't say that they wouldn't occur if 514 were implemented or a community charter school. Mr. Miller and myself have done a lot of research and have gone out and visited charter schools to understand what kind of challenges they have. And it's interesting to get that education. As I said earlier, our Matthews Advisory Committee on Education is also working on getting citizen opinion and also understanding all aspects of education in our community and trying to blend those together. So I think it's important for us to realize what the consequences are of doing a municipal charter school, but at this particular point, none of those things have happened.
Thank you. Mr. Higdon?
Well, one consequence of House Bill 514 is we're not even in consideration for building a school here. CMS has said in their Municipal Concerns Act that they're going to prioritize Davidson and Charlotte and other schools in the system, other cities in the system. So I think we have been impacted. We're not being considered for a school, and we desperately need one. We have a lot of growth here, and we need a school. We need a public school. And I want to be very clear. I am not against charter schools. I think charter schools are great. I just don't think the town should own and operate a charter school.
Thank you. What? Go ahead, Mr. Bailey. You've got 30 seconds.
I think.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Venn?
I would just like to say there's so much confusion about what House Bill 514 is. House Bill 514 did not say we are going to build a municipal charter school. It just gave the town an option. So what would happen before that is that the public is currently being engaged. We will look at every opportunity. None of the things have happened. We have a great relationship with Sean Strain, who is actually in the audience tonight. And thank you for coming, Sean. He is our district representative. He listens to us. The mayor was on the school board, has a great relationship with that board, and he and Jeff Miller, who is on our advisory committee, are working very hard. This board that's currently in place will not let anything happen to our children. They're important to us as they are important to the parents. School options are important, and the parents need to have those options.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
A lot of this is a history lesson, but as I recall, CMS has not invested in Matthews in a heck of a long time. This fight was fought because we have trailers at Elizabeth Lane for 18 years with decrepit wooden plank boards that are, let's just say, we have too many trailers in our town. They will not build brick and mortar. They say because our cafeteria and our auditorium won't house the students. Well, if it houses the students in a trailer, why won't it house the students if you enclose the walls at Elizabeth Lane? They say that there's a formula. You have to have 12 square feet per student for lunch and for assembly and things like that. It's a bureaucracy, but the fact is they haven't been investing in our town in a darn long time. And this was used, in this commissioner's opinion, as a negotiating tool to try to get them and get their attention. I have no real support for starting municipal system schools. I also do support charter schools. Competition brings out the best in product.
That question was asked a long time ago, but I think your point was a series of bullet points that said, did any of these things occur? The answer is no. None of those things have occurred. The other thing is that the CMS is expanding Alexander School, which is going to be a relief school for students here in Matthews. To Commissioner Miller's point, he's spot on. We can talk about House Bill 514 and what have you, but CMS has done nothing for the town of Matthews for a very, very long time. And we do not want to end up like our sister communities to our south, where there are actually students now having lunch in the hallways of the school. So it's not just a problem for Matthews, it's a problem for a lot of places. And that's why we're fighting for the students from the standpoint of needing more space. And I think a charter school is a perfect option as well.
Yeah, just the sitting folks. Okay. So we're coming up on time. We have one final question, but I'm going to let Mr. Bailey give his rebuttal first. And Mr. Higdon.
While I was on the school board, I supported the bonds that we passed for close to $1 billion. And Matthews got a benefit from that because there were some schools, they weren't in Matthews, but they were close to Matthews, that would take students from our area. The problem that we've got is there's schools that need to be rebuilt. There are schools that are in terrible condition. There are schools that are too small. And we've spent 50 years being behind on our bonds. And we need to catch up. But how do you catch up with a need of another $1 billion? I think this community just needs to think a little bit about some of the things that we do and putting a priority on education.
Just a final comment. If you don't think threatening to build our own school system strains, sorry Sean, our relationship with CMS, you're in a dream world. We have greatly strained our relationship. I think we still have a working relationship, and CMS hasn't done necessarily anything against Matthews, but our relationship is strained, and when elected, I will work more collaboratively with them and less confrontationally.
All right, thank you. The final question comes from a former mayor from the town of Matthews. This question involves what your position is with regards to being an elected official on a local level when it comes to interaction with state elected officials. In 2016, Mayor Taylor and the council unanimously adopted a resolution opposing the General Assembly in Raleigh and its interference in local government authority. Bills passed by Raleigh included restricting local control over things like billboards, protest petitions, and zoning. In 2018, concern was raised by a former mayor with regards to Raleigh's continued erosion of local government control. In 2019, over 12 months after the former mayor raised concern about this issue, the town council finally passed a second resolution objecting to Raleigh's actions. The question before you is, if you are elected, what substantial efforts will you make to curtail the continued erosion of local government control by Raleigh? And just to change it up, I'm going to start with Ms. DeMint.
As a first-term commissioner, the first term is a lot of learning. And so about resolutions, Some things I have learned, they can work, and sometimes they can't work. But I do think that there are a lot of ways, and it depends. I do want more control at a local level. I think we all do. But I think sometimes a resolution is not always the best way to go about that. Sometimes it's a collaborative work with getting to talk to people face to face, and I know that that has happened with the board currently in trying to work with them. So I think it's a case-by-case basis. So a resolution can work for some things, but I also think that there are better ways of working with people collaboratively instead of trying to be heavy-handed with a resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Whitley?
I was on that board with Jim Taylor when we passed that resolution. And I think in some incidents, the local board knows what's best for Matthews than the state does. But it's a hand-in-hand glove, because on some other issues, we then went back to the state to help us get funding for certain projects. And I personally visit the office down in Raleigh, the one-day session where local government come, and we visit every one of our representatives. We have needs and we want some things, and it costs money. And so in order for us to get money, we need to court our representatives and let them know what we need, and hopefully they can get that. So it's a tool for on some issues or local. There is some things that we know better rather than Raleigh does. But at the same time, we need Raleigh to be able to continue to fund and make sure things are for our community as well too. And I appreciate our relationship with our representatives and the ones that are working on our behalf for the town of Matthews.
Thank you. Mr. Tufano?
Resolutions are of little value without resolve. And resolve is what we need on our mayor and our commissioners. Resolve to get solutions solved, and to listen and to speak to every ear that will hear, to our representatives, to others outside of our representatives, all the way to the governor if necessary. And when we want something to happen in Matthews, we need to have a vocal and loud voice, but in a very respectful, obvious way, but nevertheless, we need to be activists for our town. And I think the mayor and the commissioners together can form that powerful group that can bring change and benefit our town.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. To me, this is a question of management style. There are 7 people up there, the mayor and the 6 commissioners. The mayor is considered by default the leader. I've had many jobs in my life. When I move from one job to another job, if this isn't working the way I used to manage it, I'm not in charge of it anymore. The point of that story is it's a management style. If Paul Bailey has a different management style than a former mayor, I still support Paul Bailey. Whether you put it on paper and dictate it and you all sign it, or whether he has face-to-face meetings or phone conversations or one-on-one meetings or whatever that is, that's the mayor's choice, and I support the mayor.
Mr. Crosby?
I really like this question because it's verging on a constitutional law question, and I really appreciate that. Just Matthews operates under the umbrella of Raleigh. Unless we plan to secede from North Carolina, that's just the way it is. Good relationships with our state reps, good relations with our state senators, good relationships with our congressmen is critical to getting the things that Matthews needs to be a vibrant community. As far as where government should be, I do believe in a devolved government. Your vote is worth more on a local level than it is on a state level. That's just basic math. Control should be, in my opinion, on the in Matthews for Matthews citizens, but we still have to have those good relationships with the state officials.
Thank you. Mr. McCool?
We have to make sure that we have a good relationship with Raleigh to make sure that we get the things we need done. Sometimes there are things that we can't do from a Matthews perspective, but as a board we can go to Raleigh and campaign for things. So we need to make sure we have a good relationship there. But also we need to voice our opinion when they do something we disagree with. That's also our duty to our citizens and the people who live here to make sure that the town's voice is heard.
Ms. Garner.
So I think there are several underlying issues here to make it more complex than the question at hand. You're talking about, do we work well with Raleigh? Well, part of the problem with this series of events was that we were working too well with Raleigh. When Senator Dan Bishop's bill came up, and he was the one who introduced this idea of taking some of the strength away from the town on tree ordinances. The town commissioners had at least 1 or 2 meetings where they talked about how it would play out in the current election. And so that kind of slowed the message down a little bit. But I think everybody sitting up here, and probably everybody in this room, would agree that local knows best.
Thank you. Mr. Urban?
I would concur with Commissioner Miller that I've served with Paul Bailey this term. I've served with Jim Taylor for several terms as well. Each one has a different management style, and I was willing to give Mayor Bailey my support of his management style, how he wants to address Raleigh. But I've been on the record in stating that I have no problem the day that the board seats in December, a new board and what have you, the resolution is put out there about what we want to do, and we can have all the flowery rhetoric we want. But it's a game. It's a difficult thing in politics and working with Raleigh and working on both sides of the aisle. And the reality is we're nonpartisan here. But I will say that some of the things we can do in addition, okay, other than a piece of paper as a resolution, I think the fact that the town of Matthews is a member of Quad, and I'm the town liaison to a member of Quad, which is the South Indian Trail, and nope, take Indian Trail out, Stallings and Matthews, Mint Hill. And the fact that now, as we communicate together, we're 3 communities of over 100,000 people. That's 100,000 voters. Now when you go to Raleigh and have a discussion with the legislators, it's a different attitude adjustment. So I think that was one of the things that came out of Jim Taylor's reign at one time, was the notion of doing Quad, and that's really helped tremendously from our standpoint.
Thank you. Mr. Blaine?
Well, my feeling is that non-binding resolutions, what do they really accomplish? What I think much more important is developing a strong relationship. That's what happens when you have non-binding resolutions.
It's sticking it to Raleigh.
Test.
Again, I'm not sure how important non-binding resolutions are and what effect they have on the legislature. But I think the most important thing is to develop good relationships with our legislators and work with them closely and let them know what's important for the town of Matthews. But that being said, I'm opposed to Raleigh eroding all the powers of the local government here on things like zoning, or whether you could frack in people's backyards, things like that. I mean, those are issues that should be looked at on the local level. And I'm opposed, and I would do whatever I could to try to work with our legislators to prevent it. Well, that's legislation. Wow. Thank you.
So apparently these microphones are only good for a brief period of time. So with that being said, I am going to use Evan Roberts, the local scout to my left from Troop 39. He is going to walk from the next 4 candidates and hand each one the microphone until we conclude. Thank you.
Okay, that'll work.
Ms. Garson saved the day, and Mr. Roberts.
I think it's been said, is this really, there it is. I think it's been said before, my management style is to interface with people and talk to people and try to resolve issues face to face. I personally think that the control of zoning needs to be at the local level. And I will tell you that our former state representative, Mr. Brawley, and myself have had that conversation multiple times in the past. But we passed a legislative agenda as a council, and I took that agenda to Raleigh with multiple other individuals on this council and the town manager. And we sat down with each of our legislative representatives and talked to them about what our agenda was. One thing that I do have that other mayors didn't have is the Metro Atlanta Mayors Coalition. And again, I talked to them about this before, multiple cities involved. And this is one of the issues that we're taking up. There's a lobbyist involved, and we're trying to work together to make changes for all of us, not just Matthews. And putting out a resolution to me is somewhat of a punitive way to approach that. I'd rather cooperate and make it clear what we need to have.
Thank you. Mr. Bash?
So it sounds like there's a fair amount of consensus that's being reached here, which is always a wonderful thing when politics is involved. But bottom line is, it sounds like most of us are basically saying that we think that the decision making is best when it's done locally. We also recognize that we have a relationship with Raleigh that we need to respect. That being said, we have opinions that also need to be respected by the other side as well. The question then becomes, how do you approach that? And I think it's incumbent upon the sitting board to work collaboratively together to try to figure out what the best solution is. And the only other thing I was going to add to what was suggested, which is what the mayor just said, which is let's bring other cities involved to get a little bit more mass and on our side, as well as some other thinking about how to approach this topic.
Thank you. Ms. Hoover?
We have to work together and keep good communications with our state representatives. But as for the resolution that was passed, I agree 100% with that. And I was glad to see that they did pass that vote.
And last but not least, Mr. Higdon.
I'll be quick. Yes, I think it's important that we maintain a very respectful relationship with our state representatives. But I am somewhat concerned when really silly, stupid bills are put forth, such as let's eliminate all tree ordinances in North Carolina. Let's allow billboards to be placed all over town. Those are no-brainers, and we should immediately, not wait for the Metro Mayors Coalition, we should immediately and forcefully let our representatives know that these are not good ideas and these are things that we don't want in Matthews. And that's been my frustration. And when I could not get a resolution, I simply wrote letters on my own, and I've done many to Mr. Brawley and Mr. Bishop and others as well. I think we have to communicate, and when bills are really bad for Matthews, we've got to let our state representatives know, hey, stop it, that's not good. Most of the stuff that they do is really good, but they've had some really bad bills, and we need to let them know that we don't appreciate them.
But just like they had on the tree bill, that was actually withdrawn by the person that had submitted it. And then the billboard bill, and that was because of the pressure from municipalities. The billboard bill just stayed in committee and hasn't gone anywhere. So we do have a change to the zoning items that's in a bill. It's being evaluated. It's 115 pages long. We really don't know what's in that bill yet, and it's being evaluated by the League of Municipalities as well as staff in Matthews.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates. Each one of you will be given 1 minute to do a closing summation and make points to the audience that you'd like them to consider when they enter the polls. In addition, if you'd like to, during your 1 minute, you may answer any question that was previously posed that you were not allowed to answer earlier. Thank you. I'll begin with you, Mr. Bailey.
Well, I think it's getting late and everybody's getting tired, but I have enjoyed being the mayor of this town. I've enjoyed all the years that I've served this town, and I want to continue that. I think that we started with a great vision back in 1993. We've continued that through the different mayors that have served, and I think that I have done the same thing this last 2 years, and I'd like to continue to see that. We've grown this town. We've grown it with a great deal, excuse me, a great deal of vision, a great deal of an endpoint in mind of what we want to see, and I think we're going in that direction. And I would certainly appreciate your support and your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here. It is an honor to be up here, and quite frankly, a bit humbling as well. I believe that the most important role that a commissioner has is to be a thoughtful steward for our town. I approach that not from an issue-by-issue standpoint, but from a philosophy. And the way I approach decisions is trying to balance three factors, right? I want to balance the need for economic development, for our community, and ultimately for our quality of life. Those three things don't always see eye to eye, and sometimes they actually compete with each other. But we need to keep all three in play as we move forward and understand how our decisions impact each one and make thoughtful and intentional decisions about stewarding our great town.
I'm a Matthews native, and I'm also the founder of a website called Matthews Watch, where I inform the citizens of issues within the town. I love this town, and I would just love to be able to represent the citizens and do what is best for the citizens of this town. So I would appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Hello, I'm in my third term, the last two as your mayor pro tem. I think generally the town has done a good job, has had excellent planning. If you look around to other nearby towns that haven't planned so well, you really appreciate Matthews. I do think we need a course correction. We need to work more collaboratively with CMS. They're our largest educational partner, and this strained relationship has to stop. I want you to know at heart I am an environmentalist, and I very much appreciate, I'm not necessarily a tree hugger, but I love trees. And yes, I have voted for some projects where some trees have been cut down. That generally happens when there's development. But I've also stopped a lot of development, and I've greatly enhanced the enforcement of our tree ordinance. And I want to continue to do that. I want you to know that I will listen to everybody. I'm open to all ideas. I'm beholden to no one. I want to do what's best for our town, and I would very much appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight to get to know us, and I hope that if you want to ask any questions of me, that you will approach me afterwards. I would love to talk with you. One thing I want to share with you in this closing quick minute that I have is my intent for running, because I think that's important for you to know. I don't consider myself a politician, but a public servant, and someone who listens to everyone here and wants to positively and collaboratively make this place the town that we all love. And we love it because of the hard work and the diligence and the planning and the vision that our former leaders have had. And that is why we are where we are today. And we have to keep on that same track and keep things going the way we want with that vision. So I will request your support on November 5th. I would love to have a second term to put in motion more of the things that I have learned in this first term, keeping the small town feel that we love while keeping us growing in a responsible manner.
First of all, let me thank all of you for coming and being here tonight, giving us an opportunity. As a pastor, I understand that you cannot sit for 2 hours and listen to us, so I will not be long. But I want to just say that I am a 31-year resident of Matthews, 30 years as a captain of North Carolina Highway Patrol. I had 10 counties in Troop E that went from Cabarrus all the way up to the Virginia line. 270 employees. I pastored Mount Moriah Baptist Church, where we started off with 62 members and $250 in the bank account. And you can look at our campus now, where we are today, with a little over 400 members, and Lord has really blessed us. So what are you saying there? I'm glad y'all asked. What I'm saying is this: strong leadership is what we need in Matthews. We need somebody that can make good decisions and sound decisions. Bureaucrats get bogged up in stuff that don't mean nothing when you can make a common sense decision for the best of the town. I'll do that. I'm asking for your vote on November the 5th. Given the opportunity, I'd like to get the meeting to everyone in the town of Matthews. Thank you so very much.
And you didn't even take up a collection.
There you go, yeah.
Thank you all for being here. My primary focus for running is to attempt to restore a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I have found in my last few months of being an activist in the community is that there seems to be undue influence by some parts of this community on our legislative branch. And I want to correct that. I want to be an ear for the people, and I want to hear your voice. But in addition to that, I want to bring all of my business acumen and experience in bringing business and growing business. I think we need to make this a place where people live and work and play and don't have to leave town to go to work. That's going to be my secondary and primary focus is both those two things. Providing you with an ear and also providing the opportunity for this town to grow in a positive and encouraging way. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. As everybody in the room, I'm sure, would agree, we all love this town. Matthews is a vibrant, loving community and a popular destination now. I've been a councilman for 12 years, and 12 years ago it was a much different town. It wasn't vibrant, it wasn't a destination, we didn't have businesses flourishing downtown, the North End was a field. So I'm proud of all that we've accomplished. The Sportsplex was slated to be a dump years ago, and we knew it was going to become a Sportsplex, but we've seen that come to fruition, so we're all proud of that. In summary, if re-elected, I'll work with the mayor and other commissioners to seek solutions to the challenges ahead of us while being fiscally responsible. Matthews will be just fine.
A few weeks ago, I met this woman named Doris. She lives off of Samuel. She's about in her mid-80s, fixed income, with a mid-40s daughter who is mentally handicapped, owns about an acre of land. Her tax bill, because of the revow, went from $1,800 or so to a little above $4,000, and now she is not going to be able to, unfortunately, live in Matthews for much longer unless something happens. There are many citizens like Doris that live in Matthews, and I believe it's the duty of this board, whoever's elected, to make their lives just a little bit easier. I want to caution all the voters from going to wish list politics. There's a lot of great ideas about how to improve this town, from a building standpoint to a road standpoint. But if we lose the people in this town, the people like Doris, who has been here since the mid-50s, then we've lost the heart of this town. I want to be a commissioner that looks after people like Doris, that can make your lives just a little bit easier, either through taxes and through policy. So I encourage you to go to my website, votecrosby.com, to learn more about my platform, follow the campaign, and please vote on November 5th. Thank you.
If you want to rebuild our relationship with CMS, vote for a CMS graduate. If you want to preserve our history and our small town charm, vote for a lifelong Matthews resident. If you want to keep our taxes low, preserve our trees, and make sure we build our infrastructure, vote for someone who's going to have to live a generation breathing this air, paying these taxes, and driving on our roads. I hope to have your vote on November 5th.
So I'll play off a little bit on what John Higdon said. I will proudly proclaim that I'm a tree hugger. And you know, because I live on the property that my grandparents bought in the 40s, and they had the foresight to see to plant fruit trees and nut trees, and my family eats from the trees that my grandparents planted. We need to be the ones planting trees now. We need to be the ones that are giving our children a safe future, the infrastructure to keep on living with clean air, with clean, fresh water. As a board member, I will look out for our children's future.
I just want to thank those that want to preserve and protect Matthews, because if it wasn't for this board, the board under the reign of Jim Taylor and the board under Lee Myers, this town would not be the way it is today. The careful, methodical planning that's taking place is so important to this community. I like the fact that I've talked about live, work, play, and pray in this community for many, many years, and now other challengers and incumbents are using that same language, and it's important that we're a self-sustaining community from that aspect of it. I'm a little uncomfortable with the word activism. I really don't know what activism is, but I do know that I'm active in the community, and I think the bread and butter of this community is those who are active in the community are the true activists, the ones that roll up their sleeves, that donate their time to the Matthews Free Medical Clinic, the Help Center, and gobs of other nonprofits we have in town. And that's the activism I really believe in this particular community. My experience as a problem solver, I think, goes a long way in dealing with the issues in the town of Matthews. That's been proven. Yes, I'm an architect, but again, when you're dealing with rezoning, when you're dealing with developers, do you want a doctor taking out someone's teeth or a dentist taking out someone's teeth? You want an architect dealing with developers on a one-to-one basis and understanding them, as opposed to a layperson that can't tell the difference between a water table and a wainscot, or what the difference between cutting and filling and tree preservation is. And frankly, matter of fact, I wrote the tree ordinance with town staff. So, everything's a balance, and that's what this board and previous boards have been doing to create a wonderful balance. This is a fantastic town, and if you've only been here for 0 to 5 years and like it the way it is, it wasn't always that way. And it's through the planning of all the previous boards and all the citizens who've been active at that level that this town is now still as great as it has been and will be even greater in the future.
Last but not least, so I would say it's been a long night. I've got one of these things on the back. I hope y'all will pick it up. Talks a little bit about the things that I've done, my career, government, my 4 terms on the county council in Matthews, fighting the landfill that we were talking about where the sportsplex is now located, getting roads like Fullwood, actually doing things that make a difference to divert traffic around Matthews. Please take a minute or 2 to look at it. All of my stands on all of the important issues that I believe currently face Matthews, you can find them at my website, which is www.votedaveland.com. And I would appreciate you taking a look at it if you care about the issues that really affect Matthews and you really want to know what the solutions are to solve problems, and you want somebody that knows how to do it. I hope you'll consider giving me your vote. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So with that being said, that concludes tonight's Evening with the Candidates debate. I'd like to say a special thank you to the Matthews Mid-Hill Weekly for all the work they put in coordinating the event tonight. I'd like to say an exceptionally special thank you to the Matthews United Methodist Boy Scout Troop 39 that's come out in force. And of course, thank you to the candidates. Thank you for your candor, your time, and your opinions to inform the voters in the town of Matthews for the upcoming election. Good night.